wine sales in the U.S. have been impacted mostly in the way that the distribution has happened in terms of on-premise and off-premise. So off-premise wine sales or the off-trade has done very well in the pandemic because people are stocking up and drinking at home. Whereas, unfortunately, the on-trade or restaurants have not done as well. They have actually suffered through this. The lockdowns, the various restrictions that are in place have really impacted sales. You can see it in the Nielsen scan data numbers in that, on-premise wine sales are down over 20%, whereas the off-premise sales are up almost 20%. The real story here, though, I think, is the online sales, which off of a very small base is up over 200%. And now the numbers show that we're approaching 500 million or more in sales from online sales in the U.S. That's incredible. And I think that's where the real story is in the U.S. But it has impacted sales terribly in restaurants. And on the other hand, wine shops have done pretty well in this situation. Well, interestingly, we've seen a couple of things. One, Napa Valley Cabernets, especially on the high end, were a category that many people thought was declining. And in fact, we have seen high-end wines in general do very well in the pandemic. On the other hand, when the pandemic first hit, people, as they went into lockdown, stocked up on comfort brands. So less expensive, larger names that they would recognize. As the pandemic has continued, though, we've seen those price changes a bit to brands that they would have normally wanted that are a little more high priced, and that has recovered. The average price at the moment is about $11.33, which is actually more than it was last year at this time. So the trade-off it seems to be a lot more on the high end, a lot more on the low end when we're going into these lockdowns and restrictions. But as people see things easing, they go back to their previous buying habits. And so we'll see what happens as we enter this new phase of COVID cases going up and what consumers do. The prediction is that they may again start looking for things that are better priced, but we'll have to see. I think it'll be a mix because people have gotten used to the idea of entertaining themselves essentially at home, of mixing cocktails, of having wine at home on a daily basis. Certainly consumption is up in many cases. And one of the ways we see that is with vermouth sales, actually, because vermouth as a category is up to a large extent, and apparently it's because it's the mixer of choice with spirits. So we've seen some of this change in ways that may stay. I think as people get used to the idea of buying direct from wineries, the trend of wine clubs where people are selecting wines for you that you can have at home, the idea of just ordering takeout or takeaway dinner and having your own wine with it, all could be trends that would stay. At the same time, we know people are ready to get out and about and start dining out in restaurants again and being in their local shops. So we're going to hope that some of those trends don't stay and that people actually get out into those restaurants. I think it's hard to say on the category overall. What I will say is that it's very important for suppliers to trust and work with their importers and their distributors about where to place the wines at the moment, because things are changing so quickly that if an importer or a distributor advises going into one channel, say on-premise or off-premise or a wine club, then probably listen to that person who's in the market. Because I think that at the moment, many restaurants have sold their wine cellars. They will be needing to restock at some point when they reopen, so that's an opportunity. I think also that as we said earlier, it depends on the price point. I think a lot of retail shops are seeing success on across the board, but certainly a little bit more on the high end or the lower end, depending on the timing. So I think for Portuguese producers, the opportunities are not necessarily a one size fits all, but rather work with your importer and your distributor. As far as the category in the U.S., I think it follows much of the same trends as the rest of the wine world right now because things are so uncertain. But there are a lot of opportunities there for Portuguese wines. They do fit a number of these price points. People are willing to experiment because the wines are not as expensive in retail stores typically. People are wanting to try new things, especially as we get further into the pandemic and they've had the things that they find comforting in the initial lockdown. I think people are becoming much more experimental. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities for Portuguese wines. And one of the things I would also advise is that if you have the ability to work with your importer or distributor or any other group on Zoom or other types of virtual wine tastings, or take advantage of any sort of marketing through that, this is a great time to do it. And I believe those will continue. I don't know that they will continue after the pandemic in the way that they have during it, but I believe the high quality ones, the ones that really deliver great information and give a sense of place, will continue. And so if you have the ability to do that, I would suggest that as well.